Okay, I've decided to redo the beginner lessons. Well, a big chunk of the lessons actually in my Drunken Boxing course that's online. There's a couple of reasons for that. If you haven't seen any of my videos, my name is Ripski. I run Red Jade Martial Arts, and I teach a full-time intensive program every year for 3 months internationally, and I do some traveling and workshopping and things like that in other countries. The reason that I'm redoing these videos is because originally when I shot them, my first Drunken Boxing lessons, it was 2009, which is almost 10 years ago now because it's March of 2017 here. And I've trained a lot more since then. I go back and I look at those videos and I see things that I could have done differently, and I see Drunken Boxing differently. So I wanted to start things off one more time with a little more wisdom, a little more, another decade basically under my belt, as it were, in drunken training. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, drunken boxing in general, and how we're going to do the lessons. I'm going to use some of the lessons I've already created because there's no reason not to. Things like the four-road stepping form is fine, and so on and so forth. There's no reason to really reshoot them because a lot of that stuff is just choreographical information anyway. But a little bit about what I'm going to do first. So Drunken, basically, we're going to run it in two different streams. There's going to be a Wai Gong, meaning outside Gong training or skill. So an external stream of training, which is going to be filled with a lot of the videos I did before. Things like the first drunken form, second drunken form, so on and so forth, stepping form. Basically the things everybody thinks of when they think about martial arts, about Kung Fu. And then there's going to be a Neigong, Nei meaning inside. Okay, so this will be internal training. And what I mean by that, that's going to be a large group of things. It's going to include things like Qigong training. It'll include Neigong training, which I use the term differently than just inside training. And things like stretching, meditation, breathing methods, things like that. That way, somebody who actually is really trying to get this stuff has a good chance at it. The choreography is not enough, as it isn't enough in any martial art, really. You have to have a deeper understanding of the way things work. And when I first started this thing on YouTube and started teaching online, I wasn't sure it would work. But I've actually had quite a few students come to my full-time course having trained on it, and they've done really well. They actually came with a lot of stuff. And I really was still in a mindset of keeping some things to myself. I knew that the forms themselves in Drunken weren't really the real meat of the Drunken Boxing that I did. So I was a little bit hesitant to share everything, and I'm not anymore. I believe that secrecy in the martial arts is what kills martial arts. In the age of the gun, we don't have to worry about people going and training for years to gain revenge and be evil people. If you want to be an evil person, you're going to get a gun, and that's easy to do. You're not going to go and sweat and toil and suffer for years to have fighting ability. It doesn't make sense. Now, that's not to say, of course, that the Neigong training about character, about who you are, isn't important. It's extremely important. And it's a huge part of what all of the martial arts are, which are paths to become a better person. So I guess what I really wanted to drive home is that in these new videos, I'm going to focus a lot on the Neigong, and because the Wai Gong route is fairly well put together, but I'll be doing some more of that as well and releasing more of the things I didn't want to or was hesitant to at the time. So a little bit about Drunken Boxing. Drunken Boxing has always been considered, publicly at least, as like an advanced style. I'll put air quotes on that. And when I first was exposed to it, I started training with Master Ma in 1995. And that's when I first got exposed to Drunken Boxing and started playing with it and things like that. So it's over 20 years ago. I kind of thought it was stupid, to be honest, because I mean, you're staggering around, you look like an idiot. I wanted to learn like Kung Fu, I wanted to learn like Tiger or something, aggressive. Um, and at first, I, like most people, I think, really felt that the reason it was a style that was considered advanced was because it was difficult physically. Had lots of rolling and tumbling and had to do all these cartwheels and butterfly kicks and all kinds of crazy stuff. But now, 20 years later, I've come to realize, I think, why it was considered an advanced system. And if you look at the history, not that there's a ton of, historical evidence other than the Shaolin Combat Hand Combat Classic, it's called, has a reference to drunken boxing and monkey boxing in about the 15 or 1600s. It was considered and is still considered advanced by most systems that have it inside of it. Now, you take it something like the Ma style or Hungar or Chole Fat or any of those kinds of things. You learn drunken in them, but you learn it much later on. And I think the reasoning behind that point of view that it's advanced has a lot to do with what really goes on when you learn drunken boxing. And what really goes on is that you break what you already know. So you gain orthodox fundamentals in whatever your style is. And then when you start to learn drunken, it starts to break all those rules. It starts to push you to not only move differently, but to think about moving differently. Things like structure, things like power, rooting, very powerful things and very orthodox things that you learn in all styles. And the more quote unquote internal you become, Tai Chi, Bagua, Xingyi, Xingyi Liu, things like that, you learn more and more about that, what you could call mechanical aspects of the body, the internal mechanics of the body, biomechanics. And there's kind of certain rules, if the spine is straight and the neck is open, you have more connectivity throughout the body, etc., etc. Well, drunken pushes the boundaries. It's to push your boundaries about where you can be and still have power or structure and alternative ways to create those things. And what it does is it takes people out of their norm, out of their comfort zone. And after training it for a while, in my case a long while because I'm pretty thick apparently, it starts to make you look backwards at what your orthodox training was. And it makes you look at it in a more creative way. It allows you to understand more deeply what those things are, what those skills are that you're trying to accomplish. So it breaks you. That's its purpose. It's like a student coming from high school into university. When you go to university, the professors, well, not even just the professors, the curriculum is designed to break your thinking. It's to break the way you look at the world so that they can rebuild you, right? So they can change you. So you're not just like everybody else. It's why university is such a great thing. It changes who you are. Martial arts is the same, and drunken boxing is kind of the quote-unquote advanced university of that, right? It's meant to break your paradigm and turn you into something else. That's a pretty powerful thing. And I know in my case, it took me years, way too long to even probably, I shouldn't even admit how long it took me to actually be able to fight and spar with it. But I mean, more than 5 years, which is pretty slow. But the reason was that I kept trying to apply orthodox ideas and movements to a system that had nothing to do with that. It was meant to break me. So now I see it that way, and I understand it a lot better than I ever have. And I wanted to start to pass it on a little more completely, not only because I'm not afraid to give away the secrets, but because I understand the benefit of it. Martial arts is a really powerful thing, and it doesn't matter what level of martial arts or how long you've been practicing it, it's a great pathway to change who you are and to turn you into somebody that's more than what you once were. A lot of people would label these things, enlightenment and immortality and all that stuff, depending on what, mode of thinking you're in. But the truth of the matter is, it's just about progression, right? There really aren't great masters that aren't on the same path that you or I are on. We're all on the same path. We're all climbing the same mountain. And people who've been, climbing up a little earlier than you may have, our job is to help people out. Just like my teachers' jobs are to help me out. I still I just visited my Loha master the other day. You know, it doesn't matter. He's farther ahead. He's been at it longer. He's got really good advice. So I'm hoping that some of these new videos about the internal side of it and some of the external will be a little more useful to people and that you get something out of it. All right.